With the signal from our folks in the tech booth, it is time to begin our service. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's nice to see you here this morning. Welcome to all those who are joining us remotely. If everybody here in the sanctuary wants to wave to that camera, you can say hi to the folks who are here via Zoom. It's like we welcome all those here and there and all the ships at sea. What was that Walter Winchell, or who was the radio announcer who talked about all the ships at sea? It is great to have you here or there or wherever you are joining us today. Celebrating our worship service this morning, we have Chrissy Bushyeager, our Director of Religious Education, Bob Rowland, our Music Director, and all of you. It is the beginning of a new month and a new spiritual theme, a new Soul Matters theme. That theme is awakening. And today we're going to be looking at the concept of awakening to the idea of enough. Enough. And so we'll be exploring awakening in general throughout this month in our Soul Matters groups, as well as here in worship and in our religious exploration, right? All through the church. If you are joining us remotely, there is closed captioning available. And if you would like to, there will be breakout rooms at the end of the service so that you can meet in smaller groups. We had planned to start our social time after services today, but we're doing that outside, and with the weather being iffy as it is, I mean, it may be nice later, but we're not planning to set up the refreshments. But if it's nice enough to hang out outside, I invite you to do that and get to talk with some of your fellow members. Chrissy, do we have other announcements from your perspective? No? Bob? No? All right. Well, so today is the conclusion of our annual fund drive, the official end to our fund drive. If you have not pledged yet, we would ask you to do so. And just because it's the end of the fund drive, if you haven't pledged, doesn't mean that you can't. So I encourage you to go online and pledge as you're able, as generously as you can, to support the church next year. But all through our fund drive, we have asked members of the church to come up and give you a little bit of a reflection on what the church means to them. And today I'd like to welcome Cheryl Storms to come to the pulpit. Hi, Cheryl.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here today for the first time in 2 years. I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you what UUCDC means to me and how I have felt connected and continue to connect in the time of COVID. I've said many times in the past that being a part of UUCDC feels like a natural choice for me. I feel I belong here. Thank you for making me feel welcomed. Yes, I missed the in-person connections during these past 2 years, but I can say I didn't feel disconnected. This is because of what I now consider the miracle of Zoom. I'm so grateful that our church made Zoom available so we could continue to have services, meetings, and even social events. As Reverend Peter often said, during the height of the pandemic, the church is not closed. In my mind, UCCDC never turned away from the need for connection among the congregants, young and old. How lucky we are. Because of this caring and necessary decision to make Zoom available, I've been able to continue to be a part of church groups. Being able to participate with my Soul Matters group helps me to feel connected to my friends, especially during the 14 months when I was basically quarantining. I must say that spirits are lifted when we meet. I'm so grateful that we haven't had to miss a single month. And last spring, I was able to participate via Zoom in 2 very important UU programs, Jubilee and Beloved Conversations. Excuse me. While visiting family in Wisconsin, I was able to participate in Jubilee, which UUCDC was hosting. This was a 3-day anti-racism training with folks from across the country. Had it been at church and without Zoom, I and others not in the area would have missed this important weekend. Beloved Conversations was a UUA-sponsored 3-month Zoom and online workshop for UUs seeking to embody racial justice as a spiritual practice. In both programs, I met and worked with UUs from various states. Needless to say, my UU experience and my understanding of who we are and what we are about deepened as a result. And during the pandemic, I have had the heartwarming pleasure of joining folks who are supporting the Hunger Task Force. We meet in the church parking lot every second Saturday of the month with our contributions for the dinner we provide to the Life Center, which is a homeless shelter in Upper Darby that houses 50 individuals. Even while wearing masks, you can see our smiles. The first time we met, it was so difficult to not hug each other, as so many of us are moved to do. During the pandemic, we never stopped contributing dinner to the center. Although COVID restricted our serving in person the 150 hot meals to the residents and the public, as the group had done in the past, we are delivering the meals for the residents. We're very fortunate to have a couple from church who graciously delivers our donations to the center, their car and trunk full of the nourishing food for dinner, and donated items that the residents of the center can use to be more comfortable. The HTF also provides meals to those displaced by Hurricane Ida who are currently housed at the Hammock Inn in Exton. It's very uplifting to be a part of a group of people who, out of their kindness, gather to provide meals for folks who are experiencing food insecurity. Being a part of this group helps me to realize how giving to the community the UUCDC folks are. If you're interested in being a part of the Hunger Task Force, more volunteers are always welcomed. Another rewarding addition to my life during the pandemic is that I've become involved in the Anti-Racism Coalition. ARC is striving to counter the roots of racism, as well as support social justice for African Americans and other people of color and ethnicities. Again, Zoom has made it possible to meet on the third Sunday of each month and has kept our connection and purpose alive. A relatively recent offshoot of ARC is the Anti-Racism and Allyship discussion group, which meets on Zoom every other Tuesday. The group is growing and includes folks from California, Indianapolis, and New York, as well as other UU churches in the area. These discussions are rich with feelings and insights, a safe place to learn and to express. Again, ARC and the Anti-Racism and Allyship discussion group are open to everyone, and everyone is more than welcomed. And just yesterday, I, along with over 60 registrants from other UU churches in the area and other cities, participated in a Zoom ARC workshop. Our own Donna Harris led the workshop, which included informative instruction, enlightening discussion, and very helpful exercise breakout rooms. I was recently asked the question, how does going to church help you to feel human? I replied that I am able to engage in activities such as anti-racism discussions. Through the anti-racism activities made possible at UUCDC, I know that I am more than a civil servant. I may not be able to march or protest because those activities are considered to be political, so are not permitted by my federal judiciary job, but I can freely participate in the discussion group and ARC to continue on my path for social justice and better understanding of the issues of individual and systemic racism. I feel fortunate that UUCDC offers these opportunities. In closing, I can truthfully say that UUCDC has brought to my life friendship, growth, peace, pride, and purpose. UUCDC has given me a purposeful identity, which I know I can carry forward. Look at all we've done and continue to do under the restraints of COVID. Imagine what we will be able to do once we're back in full swing. For all these reasons and more, I gratefully pledge every year to UUCDC so that our work can carry on and this church of amazing people can continue to be the better angels of our nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. What an amazing testament to not only Cheryl's involvement in the church, but all the opportunities that UUCDC offers us to get involved in various activities that connect us to each other and to the community. And so, again, I urge you, if you've not yet pledged for next year's budget in this fund drive, there are pledge cards on the table in the lobby. You can do that today after the service, or you can do that online. But we appreciate your support. For those of you who have pledged, thank you so much for your generosity. And if you haven't, please do. It'll help us to do all the great things that Cheryl pointed out and so much more. So let us now begin our worship service. We'll do that by singing our opening hymn, Blessed Spirit of My Life. I invite you here to rise in body or in spirit. Those of you at home, let's all join in singing.
You may be seated. Please join me now as we recite our covenant. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. Thank you. I'd like to invite Ed Mathis to come light our chalice.
Thank you, Ed. We light our chalice this morning with words by the poet John Wellwood. It's entitled, Forget About Enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now. Not who you would like to be, not the saint you are striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you. All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out. Touch in. Let go. Thank you, Ed. We will now join in singing our loving kindness meditation, our centering song. May I be filled, may you be filled, may we be filled with loving kindness.
May I be filled
What is it you're carrying today? Is it a wonderful celebration? Is it a weight, a burden? Whatever it is you bring into this room, either here individually or virtually, you need not carry it alone. We share our joys and sorrows here in the sanctuary by dropping stones into our bowl of water, online by sharing in the chat. All those who would like to share a joy or sorrow may do so now, either by dropping a stone or sharing it in the chat on Zoom. All are welcome. And I'll drop 2 stones, one representing the joys and sorrows of those who are joining us online, and the other representing the joys and sorrows of members of our community who are not able to be with us today. Please join me now in a time of prayer. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, great and gracious God, known by many names and never fully known by any name, breath that moves in and out of our body and is ever present. In this moment, let us feel our connections to those who are close by here in this room, our connection to those who are viewing remotely, our connection with nature as it awakens in this new season, our connection across miles to those we never know and will never meet, our connection to those who have gone before us, who have laid the path that we are currently walking. Let us give thanks for all those connections, for the many ways in which we are supported and loved and cherished and nurtured. Let us give thanks for the sound of little voices among us. They are so beautiful. In this time, let us extend our love and care for those who are in harm's way, whether that's in Ukraine or anywhere else in the world. Let us open our hearts to those who are hurting, those who need our love and support. And let us pray as we do each week for peace in our own hearts, peace in our own families, peace in our own communities, as well as peace in the wider world. Let us always strive to make peace, to be peace. We offer up all these prayers in the name of all that is holy and in all the holy names. Amen. I invite you now here in the sanctuary to rise in body or in spirit, and those at home, let's all join in Spirit of Life. We can sing together as well as do the motions, and we will lead you in the movements. It begins with our chalice flame, the Spirit of Life.
Good morning. I am so happy to see so many friends here this morning. I see some new friends here this morning. I see some friends I haven't seen in a while. That is making my heart feel very full this morning, so thank you. I have a Wonder Box with me today. Yay! Oh my goodness, yay! I know, well, who's like not a fan of the Wonder Box? Okay, so the way this works, if you don't remember or you don't know for sure, there's something hidden in the Wonder Box, and we're gonna guess what it is. I'm gonna shake it for you a couple times, and then you're gonna guess what you think is in the Wonder Box. And friends at home, I have my phone, so I can see what you put in the chat, so you can guess too. Ready? Oh! I don't wanna break my Wonder Box. Oh, I see some hands up. You can go ahead and shout out. What do you think? A rock. Okay. Wait, who said it's never rocks? It's, thank you, Rob. That is it. It's never rocks. Except for the one time it was rocks. So, I don't know. What else? Yes? A book? Okay, what else? You can yell out. A water bottle, that's a good guess. What else? A phone, tennis ball. My wife commented definitely rocks. What else? What did you say, Elliot?
A drum.
A drum. Oh, it does. It sounds like a drum, doesn't it? Yes, Dylan. A toy car. It's not making the rolling sound. Oh, Miriam, I see your hand. Yes. A tiger? No, not a tiger. Good guess, though. If it was a tiger, he'd be really mad at me right now. Okay. Oh, yes. A block of wood. That's a good guess. All right. Okay, I'm gonna stop our guessing. I'm gonna look inside. Okay, you were really close with the rock this time. It's a brick. A brick. I know. It's practically a rock. I'm sorry. I know. I kind of tricked you. But it's a brick. I mean, that's not the same as a rock. Okay. So I'm going to tell a story about a brick today. It's really a story about a Buddhist monk named Ajahn Brahm. And this is a true story. He's a real person, and he's still alive right now. So this isn't like one of those stories that took place a long time ago. He's alive, and he tells this story all the time. So when he was a new monk, just having moved into the monastery, which is the place where all the monks live. They were doing some renovations. They were kind of fixing things up, cleaning some things up, the way you do, like the way we do around our church sometimes. And Ajahn was tasked with the job of rebuilding a wall that had started to crumble and fall down. Now, he was so excited to rebuild this wall because in the past he had had some experience. He was pretty handy. He had actually built walls before. He had worked with bricks and mortar before. So he felt like he could do a really good job with this. And Ajahn was also a perfectionist, which meant that he tried to do everything perfectly. Is anyone else kind of a perfectionist sometimes? Okay, yeah. So he was trying to do everything perfect, and he thought for sure he could build the most perfect wall they had ever seen in this monastery. So he went out and he started to build the wall. He put the bricks very carefully right next to each other. He was measuring, he was making sure he had just the right amount of cement between the bricks, just to make it absolute, so that all the lines lined up and all the bricks were in just the right place. When he put the final brick on the wall, the 1,000th brick on this wall, he stood back and oh no, right in the middle of his wall, there were 2 bricks that were not perfectly aligned. His heart sank. He felt sick to his stomach. He wanted to just crawl into a hole and never come out because he had tried so hard to build a perfect wall and it was not perfect. All he could see when he looked at that wall was that flaw right in the middle. So the next day, the head monk came to visit, came to see what had been going on in the monastery, and they went on a tour. And Ajahn took him around and showed him where they had replanted some things in the garden. They had repainted some walls. But the monk said, "No, I want to see this wall. Everyone's talking about this amazing wall that you built." Ajahn took him over to the wall very slowly, very reluctantly. And he said, "Here is the wall." And he looked down at his shoes because he couldn't even watch the head monk look at this wall. The head monk looked at the wall and said, "This is a work of art. This wall is beautiful." And Ajahn said, "Oh, you don't have to say that. Come on, we can all see those 2 bricks right in the middle. They are misaligned. There's a flaw. Everyone can see that this is not a perfect wall." And the head monk looked at Ajahn, and he looked at the wall, and he looked back at Ajahn, and he said, "It is true that I can see those 2 bricks, but I also see 998 good bricks, and I'm going to choose to look at those bricks." Thank you for listening to my story today. It is time for our children to go to religious education. Now hold on 1 minute so that we can have listening ears, because I have an important message for parents. So because we were going to do coffee hour today, and we're not going to do that, but that's okay. We're switching back to our regular RE schedule, which means RE ends at 10:45. So you will pick up your kids at 10:45 in their classrooms. If you're a visitor today and don't know where their classrooms are, look for me and I will help you find them, or you're always welcome to walk your kids down to their classrooms. But 10:45 is pickup time for RE today. Feel free to mingle and meet other parents and hang out with the adults for a little bit between the service and pickup. All right, Bob is going to play our sending song. The first verse, our teachers will go out into the lobby, and the second verse, our kids will go out and meet their teachers. All right, thank you.
I don't know about you, but I always have these two reactions when the teachers and the kids leave. The first reaction is, oh, look how empty the sanctuary is. But then the second reaction is, isn't it amazing how vital our RE program is and how many kids and how many teachers we have in it, and it's just a beautiful thing. Now is the time in our service where we will receive your offering to support this church and its work in the world. We do this by accepting your donation virtually through your smartphones. You can text the amount you would like to give to the number printed on your screen. Jane, we need to leave those open for ventilation purposes. So we accept the noise, but we need for safety purposes to leave the doors open. So if you will text the amount you'd like to give to support this church to the number on your screen, we appreciate it. We gratefully accept your donations. If you're here in the sanctuary and have a check that you'd like to drop, there are boxes by the doors that you can drop a check off as you leave the sanctuary. Thank you for your generosity. So just for those here in the sanctuary, you don't know about the folks online. We have right now 57 people joining us, at least 57 links, and probably more people than that joining us here today. It's such a gift to have the technology, to have the technological capability of the folks in the booth to reach out and reach across the miles to so many people, and you're all a part of that. I have two brief readings this morning. The first are words of Reverend Ralph Waldo Emerson. I sometimes call him St. Ralph. He wrote, "Do we go into the garden wishing that the pansies were taller than the daffodils, or thinking that the roses would be fine if only they didn't have thorns? Do we go into a kindergarten and wish that the children would fit into some model of perfection we hold? Or can we see that variety makes up the variety of the beauty of gardens and humans, that our spiritual task is not to make perfection, but to awaken to the perfection around us?" Next is a story from the Sufi tradition, and it involves Mullah Nasruddin. And Mullah Nasruddin is a figure in Sufi tradition as somewhat of a fool, but a wise fool. And so this story goes that Mullah Nasruddin was having a conversation with a friend who was about to get married. "I'm very excited," said the friend. "Mullah, have you never thought of marriage yourself?" And Nasruddin replied, "I did think of getting married. In my youth, in fact, I very much wanted to do so. I waited to find for myself the perfect wife. I traveled looking for her first to Damascus. There I met a beautiful woman who was gracious, kind, and deeply spiritual. But she had no worldly knowledge. I traveled further and went to Jerusalem. There I met a woman who was both spiritual and worldly, beautiful in many ways, but we did not communicate well. Finally, I went to Cairo, and there, after much searching, I found her. She was spiritually deep, graceful, and beautiful in every respect, at home in the world and at home in the worlds beyond it. I felt I had found the perfect wife." His friend questioned further, "Then did you not marry her, Mullah?" Alas, said Nasruddin as he shook his head, she was, unfortunately, waiting for the perfect husband.
Yeah, well, I don't mind to slow down anymore. I don't mind the sound of my shoes on your floor. Don't mind selling out or playing cover songs, no. Just as long as friends and family sing along. And I don't need more money or a faster car, no. Don't need a magazine to call me a superstar, no. Just gonna take our little house and make a home. Then we'll never have to face these nights alone. 'Cause in my heart, I hear you speak. And on my face, I feel you breathing right next to me. Two by land, by air, by sea. This is how it's supposed to be. Right now, and that much I can see. Right now, yeah, yeah. Pulling loaves of bread down from the shelf, and how rare it is that I stay up past 12 now. And in the backyard we are gonna start a garden. That don't sound mighty good, I beg your pardon. 'Cause in my heart I hear you speak. On my face, I feel you breathing right next to me. Two by land, by air, by sea. This is how it's supposed to be. Right now, and that much I can see. Right now, if they don't love us and we don't need them, let's find our own brand of freedom. If they don't love us and we don't need them, let's find our own brand of freedom. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I don't mind this slow down anymore. I don't mind the sound of my shoes upon your floor anymore, anymore.
That's Michael Shines singing his song, Slow Down. Last night, Irene and I attended an auction dinner at the home of two members of the church. 4 couples, all vaccinated and boosted, sitting around a dining room table, eating scrumptious food and just having a wonderful discussion. It was all so ordinary. And at the same time, it felt like a miracle. I just wanted to break down and cry. It was so powerful to be back together with people, sitting around a table just talking. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here and say that we have entered something of a post-pandemic period. And I know, I don't want to jinx it. And I know there's another variant out there. But look, we're gathering here in person. We have our vibrant RE program going on Sunday mornings. We're going to have fellowship time when the weather permits. Auction dinners without masks are happening. Like butterflies emerging from our chrysalis, it feels like we're slowly emerging from cocoons of the past 2 years. And from this early post-pandemic perspective, I can already say that I have learned a few things. I've learned that there are certain things I can't do without, like high-speed internet and Amazon Prime. But on a more serious note, I've learned that I can make do with less, that a simpler life is a satisfying life. I've learned that Irene and I can share the same space 24/7, 365, and be rather happy, which is good as I head toward retirement. But I've also learned that I crave interaction with others as well. Whether it's sitting in a coffee shop with a friend or attending a concert or a play or going to an auction dinner, I realize that those connections help to expand my universe and my sense of who I am. There's one pre-pandemic habit that I've found hard to break, though, and maybe you have as well, and we've referred to it several times in this service already. Despite the constant reminders the past couple years have thrown in our face, I find myself still striving for perfection. Anybody who's worked the tech booth knows how hard we work to put together a service where we don't have glitches, and there are always glitches, but we strive. We try to be the best we possibly can be. And you'd think that the pandemic, with all its demands and all its improvising, all its uncertainties, would have broken me of this curse. But even when I've had to experiment and, as the saying goes, build the airplane while we're flying it, I found myself striving to build the best, most perfect airplane I possibly could. I suspect some of this may resonate with some of you. Even in the face of an unprecedented global pandemic, many of us want to be, or at least want to be seen to be, perfect. We all want to be, and we want our children to be, straight-A students, both in school and in life. We strive for perfection, even though we know that it's ultimately unattainable. From an early age, we were encouraged to try harder, to study longer, focus more, to live up to our potential. And each step of the way, we're graded, whether it's with a letter grade or through acceptance to a school or by getting a job that we seek or the raise that we need, by being able to afford the house that we want or maybe that shiny new car. Our performance in life is constantly being evaluated. Do we measure up? And if you're like me, your harshest critic is the one you never escape, the one that's inside of you. The desire for perfection is, of course, perpetuated by our popular culture. We are led to believe that we can be perfect. We're bombarded with images of perfect homes surrounded by perfect weedless lawns, across which cavort beautiful children with perfect teeth and purebred dogs. In their pursuit of the perfect body, Americans spend nearly $50 billion a year on cosmetic procedures. $50 billion a year on cosmetic procedures, Botox injections, liposuctions, facelifts. Just to put that in perspective, $50 billion is more than the gross national product of many sub-Saharan African countries, and we spend it on cosmetic procedures. And the pandemic hasn't helped either, I think. By working from home, the boundaries between our work and our personal time has been blurred or even completely obliterated. The first thing many of us do when we wake up in the morning and the last thing we do before we go to bed is to check our messages, check our email, make sure something doesn't demand our immediate attention from work. It's hard to say where all this striving for perfection comes from. Even if we blame our parents, as we often do, they likely got it from somewhere themselves. I'm inclined to say that it goes back to our foundations in the Judeo-Christian tradition. In the first chapter of Genesis, right from the get-go in the Bible, after God has formed the earth, the seas, and the land, after he has populated it with animals, what happens? The Bible says, God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And so if we are created in the image of God, and God is all-knowing and perfect, aren't we called to be perfect ourselves? Between these religious values and our cultural norms, our perfectionism is, in some very real ways, hardwired into who we are. And our Unitarian Universalist tradition doesn't help either. And I would say it even drives this pursuit of perfection. The great Unitarian preacher William Ellery Channing was a staunch proponent of the perfectibility of humankind. It was Channing who said, "Our supreme good is the perfection of our being. Nothing can make us truly happy but our perfection." Whew, that's a lot of pressure. I would submit to you that this belief in the perfectibility, if not the perfection, of humankind is perhaps the most glaring imperfection of Unitarian Universalism, as well as our modern American culture. And it is a disease that infects every part of our lives. Our pursuit of perfection is insidious. Perfectionism puts a tremendous strain on our systems. It puts us in a constant state of fear. Have you experienced that fear? Fear of not measuring up to our own ideals or those ideals that others place on us? Like a juggler straining to keep 4, 5, 6 balls in the air, all lest they come crashing down, we strive to do more, to do better, to do faster. And in our doing, we deny our being. We conceal ourselves behind our tasks, and we identify ourselves by our outcomes. The author Kathleen Norris puts it this way. She writes, "Perfectionism is one of the scariest words I know. It is a serious psychological affliction that makes people too timid to take necessary risks and causes them to suffer when, although they've done the best they can, their efforts fall short of some imaginary and usually unattainable standard. Internally," she writes, "perfectionism functions as a form of myopia, a preoccupation with self-image that can stunt emotional growth." Perfectionism has another insidious effect, because when we expect perfection from ourselves, we often impose that standard on others. And when others don't measure up to our standards of perfection, we devalue and degrade and sometimes even dispose of them. Our children don't behave as we think they should, so we punish them. Our partner doesn't live up to the ideal we had when we first met, so we divorce them. Our boss doesn't have the good sense to recognize how great we are, so we quit. Our pursuit of perfection in others can become a storm cloud that blocks out the sun and casts a shadow across all that we see. We know in our hearts, those of us who remember this, we know in our hearts that Lake Wobegon is a fictional town. Yet still, we measure ourselves against this standard where all the women are strong and all the men are good-looking and all the children are above average. We know in our hearts that no matter how well-intentioned we may be, no matter how we may have convinced ourselves that we can approach some ideation of perfection, if only we work a little harder, exercise a little more, or drive our kids to yet one more activity, we will never reach this promised land. So, I'm here today to release us all from our perfectionism. Like a magic, I wish I had a magic wand. I could say, you're done. You're all done with your perfectionism. But what I want to proclaim today is that good enough is good enough. How might that feel to say, good enough? Now, if that simple declaration isn't good enough for you, if it doesn't provide the adequate inspiration to try and overcome our collective perfectionism, let me give you perhaps some more motivation. Perfectionism, the drive to hold ourselves and others up to unreasonable, unachievable standards, has been identified as one of the characteristics of white supremacy culture. Perfectionism is a result of privilege and power. The dominant white culture sets the expectations and then uses the so-called failure to achieve them to critique and to oppress those who don't measure up. So, if we want to be a people who actively engage in dismantling racism, we have a moral and social obligation to let go of this drive toward perfection, both in ourselves and especially in others. Good enough is good enough. I thought about ending this sermon on that note. It's good enough, right? Right there? But then I got worried that some of you wouldn't be satisfied to hear that the message of my sermon is a simple quip that you might find printed on a coffee cup somewhere. So in my pursuit to make my sermon good enough, I'd like to offer you something more, just a little other tidbit you can maybe take with you. While preparing this sermon, I came across an Eastern outlook on perfectionism that I thought was enlightening. My colleague, the Reverend Nathan Woodliff Stanley, tells of a Japanese phrase that he has learned, wabi-sabi. Say that with me, wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi. Although the phrase is difficult to translate into English, Nate explains that wabi-sabi is the recognition of the beauty of the imperfect, the impermanent, and the incomplete. The beauty of the imperfect. Wabi-sabi, he says, describes our lives perfectly. Imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete, but nonetheless beautiful. Wabi-sabi. Our spiritual challenge, I think, is to rest in wabi-sabi, to trust in wabi-sabi, to live in wabi-sabi. We must begin to recognize when we are good enough, when we have done enough, when we have achieved enough, no matter how far it might be from some ideal that we or others set for ourselves. And to find contentment there, to find satisfaction there, to find beauty in that place of wabi-sabi. So if you take something away from today's message, I hope it's wabi-sabi. I'd like to close with a story from my past, a moment of wabi-sabi perhaps. More than 20 years ago, Irene and I were walking on the beach in Florida. Now, these were dark days for both of us because I was struggling in the depths of my depression. My condition had clouded my view of the world, and I was dissatisfied with everything and everyone around me. My memory of this incident was we were walking on the beach, but we were walking separately, and Irene was far ahead of me. And I was looking down at the sand, and occasionally I'd pick up a shell and look at it and toss it into the water. And Irene must have stopped walking because I caught up to her, and she asked me what I was doing. And I said, I'm looking for the perfect shell. I'm looking for the perfect shell. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, all this time you're looking for the perfect shell, you're missing out on the beauty around you. Wabi-sabi, the beauty of the imperfect. May we all rest in wabi-sabi. Blessed be. In a spirit of wabi-sabi, we'll sing our closing hymn, How Could Anyone? I invite you to rise in body or in spirit here in the sanctuary, and let us all, whether we're here or there, sing together. We're going to sing it through twice, right, Bob?
How could anyone soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Please join me now in saying the words as we extinguish our chalice. Although we now extinguish
Our chalice flame,
and we
and behold its warmth in our hearts and in all the days ahead.
I want to thank our tech team this morning. I want to thank our hospitality team and our online host, Rich Carencross, for the support during this service. Now the sun is coming out, so we can mingle outside. I don't know that we'll have refreshments, but I encourage you here, if you're here in the sanctuary, to meet and greet others around you, as perhaps you're waiting for your children to get out of the religious education program. Those online, I'll remind you, please stay on if you want to join a breakout group and have coffee hour in Zoom. And now, as we close our worship service with our benediction, I invite you to take the hand of someone nearby if you feel safe doing so. If not, just raise your hands and hold hands virtually as we've been doing in the past. And let us say together the words of our benediction. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return refreshing. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found, and the courage to take it step by step. Blessed be. Have a great week, everyone.